Hi, I'm Holly. I write and teach the Bible studies here at Study with Friends. My background in this is a combination of formal education and my own personal study of the Word. I infuse perspectives from different systematic theologies when I think that would be helpful in rounding out our understanding of the text. But for the record, my formal education is from a Reformed theological seminary. I strongly believe that we should all understand the background of anyone who's teaching us about the Bible. So if you'd like, you can learn more about me at studywithfriends.org or zondervan.com. This is a group of real women doing Bible study and life together, and we're really glad you're here. So we did a little bit of this work at the end of the last group, and I would love for you girls to give me some examples, additional examples out of these, 15 books that we're trying to do in one unit. So
16.
We aren't really doing Daniel.
Oh, Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel's a little bit of
He's his own thing.
a one-off. Yeah.
He's doing
So
his own
technically,
thing.
and then I'll say this again, technically in the Christian canon, Daniel is one of the latter prophets. He's one of the major prophets.
Mm-hmm.
So the major prophets are Daniel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah. And then, so that's 4. And then the 12.
And that's to do with length, right?
Yes. So
Not like importance.
no, and that's, I mean, you can't really extract the two, but yes is the easiest answer,
Okay.
because Isaiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah, those scrolls were huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 12 actually formerly were all on one scroll. And so it used to be called the Book of the 12. And so yes and no to your question about importance, because we have to understand that the canon, like what we read in the Bible right now, was designed by God to be included. And so God must have wanted more of the major prophets to be included. So therefore, they must be more important. The words must have been important for him to include. Like Obadiah, God bless his little heart, he's one chapter.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's all good stuff. Mm-hmm. No one's saying that's insignificant. But yeah, major and minor, for the most part, is about scroll length. But you can't extract the scroll length from God's implied importance.
Length.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could we pause for a minute and talk about canon? But we were talking about the canon, and you were like harping on, here's the most important thing that you take away from this conversation is that the canon wasn't decided upon, it was discovered.
Yes.
And I just wanted to
but that was a conversation between you and I
about my New Testament homework.
Yeah, on a FaceTime. So we should bring the rest of the group up to.
I'm asking you to
okay. So you're asking me to do
reiterate
that.
and
so
clarify
Gianna
that,
had a class
important.
in college about New Testament literature. New Testament literature or New Testament?
New Testament as literature.
Okay. And
I'm doing great in that class, by the way.
Our family joked that she never did any of her homework. She just called me up and was like, "Mom," and I said, "You got to uncover these things for yourself, kiddo." But I couldn't help myself because I love it all, so I would just start spewing out all.
If I may defend myself, since you've brought this up, if you were taking a biology class and you had a immediate family member who's in grad school for biology, would you not call them and ask for some help?
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Thank you.
So, and I loved having the conversations with you. But one of the things that I think you're trying to poke at is that we talk about how did the books that are in here get included, and who decided what should be included, because there are lots and lots of gospels. There are lots and lots of other books. We even know that the Catholic Bible has more books than the Protestant Bible. And so that can be, the Maccabees. Actually, I really strongly recommend reading the Maccabees story, because
it's a fun time.
It's also foundational to understanding the political climate of the New Testament when Jesus came onto the scene. However, it does cause people to wonder sometimes if this was an arbitrary thing. And so the best way that I know how to explain it is that the canon wasn't compiled, it was uncovered. And what I mean by that is that the text itself firms up the rest of the text. So if you have, for example, a text that you think, okay, let's say we're at the council of any of these people who decided. If you had a text that you thought might be inspired by God and should be included in the canon, but it's not referred to by any of the other, books that you know should be in the canon, like once you start figuring out, okay, the prophets, certainly the Pentateuch, that's the obviously canon. The New Testament canonizers had an easier time because the Hebrew Bible was already established. So I don't really, if I'm being honest, I don't really know how the Hebrew Bible came to be canon. I don't know what the process is. I don't know Hebrew church, temple history on that. But I do know that the New Testament early church was really invested in which of these are truly God inspired and should be included in our half of the equation, the Christ revealed part of the, and obviously Old and New Testament, that was not a terminology they were thinking of at that time. So if a piece of text was referred to or prophesied in the Old Testament, then that gave it, you're like, okay, right. Okay. That makes more sense. So the canon wasn't really pick and choose kind of thing. It was, through prayer and great pains and the Holy Spirit, it was uncovered to the people who were tasked with putting it together. Like God revealed it to them, like this is in and this is out. And there are ways that you can see that very clearly. Now, what does that mean for the Catholic Bible and the Christian Bible? So, the Protestant Bible. What that means is there are some so a lot of people are really like, why is Esther even in there? Esther's a big one that's contested. And actually the book of Ruth is a little bit contested as well. And so people are like, why are these stories in there? The Catholic Bible has, we just talked about Maccabees, that these stories inform how we understand the things that occur around them in the time frame. I know you guys all know this, the book of Esther doesn't mention God at all overtly. And so a lot of people are like, well, why would that even need to be in there? So it was much higher pay grade than me who figured these things out. But we can see, accepting the canon as it is, we can see how Esther's really informs our faith, informs our understanding of God. Certainly if we apply this covenant lens, the Hebrews at that time were exiled. This is a descendancy issue. Esther was a Jew, so that was a descendancy issue. And this special relationship with God where she really was called by God to do something that was turned the trajectory of the Hebrew nation at that time. So even applying this covenant lens that we're talking about today, you can also see why some of those things were included in the canon. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to definitely mention it as we are going through this because such a big argument that I've heard and considered is like the Bible was written by men. Mm-hmm. And that's technically true, mm-hmm. but it was inspired by the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult it's really honestly very difficult to justify, the Protestant canon or even the Catholic canon to someone who's looking at it just from the outside because it was decided in like the 1800s.
Oh no, way before that.
When was it?
Oh no, I don't know. We should do a whole series on church history.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it was decided long after Jesus was dead. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, especially when you see there's also a gospel of Thomas and there's a gospel of mm-hmm. there's why don't we know about her story? Mm-hmm. It's so easy to look at it for a minute and say, oh, it's propaganda. Mm-hmm. It's fitting their narrative. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to touch on it while we were here because you can dig into it mm-hmm. and you should, mm-hmm. and you can ask questions and we should do a series on it, but it's not a loose thread that if you pull the entire sweater comes apart. It's perhaps a loose thread, but it's not it does not compromise the integrity of the sweater that is Christianity.
Yeah,
like you can dig into it, and I encourage people to dig into it because it's very interesting.
It is interesting. And the truth is, the more you dig in, the more solid more solid it is. It's revealed to you, which is why we always start in prayer, asking God to show us exactly what he has for us to see. And different people are in different stages of their own walk, and they have different questions, like different things that challenge them or make them feel doubt. Let's be honest. We all have doubts. You're not a bad Christian because you have doubts. We're human. So I guess what Gianna and I are both kind of wired to do is, if you have a doubt, you go dig it up. You just go start digging through and find out what is the answer.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Do research.
Yeah.
Challenge things that have been said. Consider your own opinions. I promise that Jesus will hold up.
Yeah.
But don't just accept, oh, this is canon because someone said it's canon.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Ask yourself why it's canon. And don't be a sheep. Don't be a sheep. Mm-hmm. Have your own faith.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, girl. Yes.
We watched a documentary recently, you and I, of a faith that doesn't do that.
Yeah. So
make sure that we establish that Christianity and the canon hold up.
You know what? I often, I'm going to plug a book. I don't get any money from it. I don't even know the guy, but there's a book. My favorite book in this element, and then we'll get back into this particular content, is there's an author. His name is Paul Little. I have a bunch of them. You can, I don't know if anybody can see it down there. I buy this book in packs of 10 because I'm constantly giving it away.
Yeah.
It's called Know What You Believe.
You sent it to me and my roommates.
I love this book for a couple reasons, because it tackles questions in, like, each chapter is a question that you might ask about what you believe, and like, does it stand up? It's a trilogy, actually. It's Know Who You Believe, Know What You Believe, and Know Why You Believe. KNOW. Know What You Believe, Know Why, and Who. But I particularly like KNOW, Know What You Believe, because, like I said, you can just pick it up. You don't have to read it in a linear way. You can just pick it up and look at it at the questions. And it just answers them in a very practical way. Like, why the canon is in there, and like, why were these books included, or what did Jesus really, whatever. And so there are certainly wiser people than I who answer these questions, but it's a journey. Like, we're not going to answer that question here today and be done with it. But it's honestly, for me, it's been the questioning process that has so deepened my own faith. And that's why I hope that you and your sister, and everybody who I have a relationship with or listens to me, hears me say, ask the questions. Ask the questions. Like, I'm a skeptic at heart. Like, that's who I am. I'm a curious person, and I'm a skeptic. I'm always like, give some people the side eye. I'm like, what? In fact, what do I say all the time in this house? The girls will say something, I'll say, source that. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Because and then I'm like, go find a more reliable source. So I'm just a skeptical person, and I think that that's one of the reasons that that I've dug in so much. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay.
You know what I see when I look for that book? I just see this beautiful bookshelf.
Oh, yeah. Gianna put this bookshelf together. Okay.
Such craftsmanship.
So, Gianna, I'm going to ask you to start in the Ezekiel passages that you were interested in, and then I'm going to throw it out there to the ladies. Again, what we're doing here is we're looking for the themes of land, descendants, and a special relationship with God as they crop up in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and the 12. And again, I'm going to say, we did not, and no one should ever impose this theme on the text. We lifted this theme out of the text. I would never want to do it, and you should never, you should always unpack it with a teacher who's teaching thematically. Try to really make sure that they're not pushing the theme into the text, but really that they're pulling the theme out of the text.
Because it's just bad literary analysis.
Yeah, it's not well, and it's also bad biblical study. So
it's just, you don't have an idea and then find evidence for it.
Right.
You create an idea based on the evidence you see.
Right. Well, or you, I wouldn't even use the word create. You
form.
you extrapolate.
Sure.
Or some people would say exegete. Okay. Go with your Ezekiel, girl.
So this is Ezekiel 2, verses 3 and 4. And it's Ezekiel's call. And he said to me, Son of man, I send you to the people of Israel, to nations of rebels who have rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me to this very day. The descendants also are impudent and stubborn. I send you to them, and you shall say to them, Thus says the Lord God.
Okay. So tell me where you saw land, descendants, and a relationship with God.
Well, the word descendants was in there. It's like I was saying earlier, sometimes the relationship is not great. And in this case, the relationship between the people of Israel and God is not good because they're rebelling and they're doing a bunch of bad stuff. But even still, that is the relationship. We're not always looking for a good relationship with God. We're looking for the relationship with God. So that's what I see there. And I liked that as a good example of it's not all sunshine, roses, and fairy tales.
Yeah, and may I lean in and say they can't have rebelled or transgressed, which is the ESV translation of these verbs. Oh, I know. Sorry. The ESV translation of these verbs are rebelled and transgressed. They can't have done that if they weren't in a special relationship to begin with. You can't rebel against someone you don't know, right? If you don't have some kind of relationship with someone, you can't really rebel against them. So we unpack, it's a little bit under the surface there, but I just wanted to mention that. And of course, you're right. You said descendants. Do you see the land in here?
I know that it's there because you're smiling.
That's okay.
But I can't see it.
That's okay. Sometimes it's not as obvious. You guys want to jump in it?
I mostly saw special relationship. Because like you said, like the Lord, like you said, basically they had a relationship with him that they were rebelling against him. And he's like, he wants them to turn back to him.
Yes, for sure. And that, you're right, that leans into what we said a moment ago, which is the latter prophets and the prophets themselves are really there to proclaim return to your God. So we're going to see that's really heavy in all of the prophetic word that you read in all the prophets. But I just want to lift out, and you tell me if you think I'm making too much of this piece, because, I don't want you to be like just drinking the Kool-Aid. But if you look in, Son of man, I send you to the people of Israel, to nations of rebels. So by separating the people of Israel and the nations around them, he's disseminating between literally the land where Israel is and the land where the nations are. Now, at this time, it's early in Ezekiel, so they hadn't been. Don't write this in Sharpie because I'd have to look at the. Oh, let me look at this. Ezekiel at the beginning of his, I'm pretty sure.
My favorite thing.
I know, I love
in
this
the whole
thing.
wide world.
I'm pulling out my Bible chart. So Ezekiel, one of the things that I did in the homework, I want to give some context to this. One of the things that I did in the homework earlier than the content that we're going over right now is we looked at who the audience was for each of the prophets. And if you look at who the audience is, so some of them are Isaiah, some are Judah, some are exile, some are in the exile, some are post-exilic. So to know where the prophet is speaking in the timeline of Israel is helpful. I'm making an assumption that because this is early in Ezekiel, that he's still working with them while they're in the land. So let me just double check that, because then you can read this and say, oh, he is talking to Israel in the land and the nations who are in another land. Okay. And I am right. So Ezekiel is partly, his work was done partly during the divided kingdom. So part of it was to Judah, and then part of his time was speaking to the nation during the exile. So after they got the boot. So in this portion, he's saying, so let's read it again in that context. And I'll give you one of these too, Rachel, because they're really great reference. so then if you think about it, he said to me, Son of man, I send you to the people of Israel in the land where they are, and to nations of rebels who have rebelled against me. So Israel has rebelled against
that's
me.
not, that comma isn't, that comma isn't a continuation of the same thought. It's a separator.
It's, to me, because it says to nations.
Nations plural, which
Plural.
Israel's one nation.
To me, that's what I read in
Okay.
this text.
Again,
so to
I
me,
wish I had my Hebrew speaking roommate here
so,
because she would
no,
be
it's
able
okay
to tell
because
me.
because we know that the translators, they spoke Hebrew too, so we just have to really.
I always like to
have
go
to zoom
the,
in.
I always like to go to the original translation though and see what that.
Well, you
has
can
to say.
certainly do that. I have the Strong's Concordance right there, but let's not do that right now. Oh my gosh, that's another thing I've never shared with you. Wait till you see that. See that big fat yellow book? It says Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. Do not pull it off, but I'll show it to you after.
I'm just reiterating the go to the source and question your faith thing.
Yep. Okay, so to me, when he says, I send you to the people of Israel, to the nations of rebels who have rebelled against me, he's speaking of both sets as rebels, but he's disseminating the people that are in the promised land and the nations around them who are observing them in the promised land. Because remember, the purpose of Israel was they were elected to shine a light on God and to behave differently so that people could see God through this nation. And so he's saying, go sort that out with them. So to me, it's under the text. It's not right on the top of the text, but it's in there. That land theme is in there.
Yeah,
Do
and
you think I'm making more of it? Do you think I'm full of baloney?
No,
You
I get
should.
it.
You could tell me. You should tell me if you think I am.
I'd tell you.
I know you would.
What makes me not think that you're full of it is that in the rest of the chapter and in the rest of Ezekiel's call, you see
Yep.
more references to the land,
Actual
and to,
land. Mm-hmm.
and to the people of Israel as a nation in a physical sense.
Yes, in a physical place. That's
Even
great.
the other like verses that we were reading in Ezekiel, that was definitely like land involvement. About
Do you
how
wanna
he like
hit
brought
one?
them out of Egypt.
Oh yeah, sure. Yep. Say it again.
How in it's chapter 20 how it says like that God had promised to bring them out of Egypt and he had done so. And so like that's the beginning of Ezekiel that we were just reading, and it kind of like hints at the land, but then like in chapter 20 it talks about like exactly how he brought them out of the land.
I just happened to pull that up. So chapter 20 verse 5 says, and say to them, thus says the Lord God, on the day when I chose Israel, I swore to the offspring, descendants, of the house of Jacob, making myself known to them in the land of Egypt. That's another one where you say all three of the special relationship. It's one verse and all three of the elements are in there. Yep. Very good. Thanks, Rachel, for doing that.